I'm joined now by Adam Klasfeld from All Rise News. Adam, there is a major story that just broke that has to do with the DOJ taking a very quiet step to be able to protect someone like Donald Trump as far as the Epstein files are concerned. Can you explain what they're trying to do right now?
Now, 2 minutes before midnight, Brian, the Trump Justice Department's political appointees went to federal court in Manhattan and put in a new filing in their case of unsealing grand jury minutes. Now, remember, grand jury minutes aren't where the transparency that the public has been clamoring for in the Epstein and Maxwell investigations. That's not where you find it. But even that amount of transparency that they're asking for here, they revealed in this memo that they plan to redact personally identifying information of uncharged individuals who are not alleged to be part of Epstein and Maxwell's crimes. So let's unpack that a little bit. Personally identifying information, a name is personally identifying information. One can say one's business is personally identifying information. Does the owner of Mar-a-Lago identify the person who
Right.
is the subject of any part of a grand jury investigation? Of course. So if they actually win the unsealing of grand jury records, and there are strong legal constraints preventing that, this is Trump's Justice Department. And again, I'll go into this a little bit more later. The political appointees in Trump's Justice Department saying that if we win, if we meet this standard, our plan is to redact all this stuff.
Isn't that completely antithetical to everything that the Trump administration officials, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Alina Habba, Pam Bondi, all said that they wanted to do by releasing the Epstein list? I mean, the Epstein list is everybody other than Epstein and Maxwell. These are the people that were the clients of the people who were trafficking these children. And so wouldn't that just completely shut the door on ever being able to figure out who was the beneficiary of these crimes?
Right. Well, the transparency keeps getting narrowed. We had earlier this month in an unsigned memo, the Trump Justice Department and the Trump FBI saying there is no list, there's nothing to reveal here. And by the way, we're going to not reveal anything because of the trauma of the victims. They said that there are more than 1,000 victims and each has their unique trauma, and therefore we can't reveal anything. The public reacts to that. They get outraged and they say, you know what? Okay, we reconsidered it. We'll reveal the grand jury information. And the Transparency Brigade comes out. Who's part of the Transparency Brigade? Pamela Jo Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, Todd Blanche, her deputy and Trump's criminal defense attorney, and Jay Clayton, the political appointee for the Southern District of New York. Those are the three signatures on the memo. Are any of the prosecutors on this memo? Not a single one of them. And remember, the lead prosecutor, Maureen Comey, has been fired. And so the judges, when the government first filed this gambit to unseal grand jury information, as if that's a transparency people were clamoring for,
Right.
what had said that the judges instructed them, you're going to have to produce an argument. They gave them some instructions for that. They said, you may not have notified the victims. You remember we talked about that earlier. So this was the government's first response to that. And now we see that the plan is broad redactions of personally identifying information in the plans of the political appointees here. And beyond that, they answer the question about notifying the victims. And they say the government has, quote, now, end quote, notified all of the victims whose names appear in these grand jury records but one. So it seems that the government is acknowledging, hey, we didn't do it in advance, Your Honors, but, better late than never, right?
And so this is the grand jury testimony that they're trying to subpoena. They also have the Epstein files, and so why do you think that they're going that route and trying to kind of twist themselves into pretzels to limit the amount of information that's released on the grand jury subpoena side when they have the Epstein files? Why don't they just do it themselves? Like, why don't they just eliminate all third-party personal identifying information and release the Epstein files, since presumably that's what they're trying to do on the grand jury side.
Right. Well, it's pantomime transparency. You choose this kind of Rube Goldberg apparatus, a kind of old machines where you do a bunch of things to go a very short distance.
Yeah.
This entire Rube Goldberg apparatus to do an illusion of transparency here, find a route through the courts where the judges could say no. They can say we have
Right.
very
And then
strong.
you get to blame them, by the way,
Yes.
when they do say no, because they're restricted by law in terms of what they can and can't release.
Right. There's a way to be transparent, and the way you do it is not through the method that Trump's political appointees are doing here. I think the natural conclusion that one can draw from that is this is an elaborate way to avoid transparency, and while trying to placate the people who are unhappy about the conclusions of that unsigned memo saying nothing to see here.
Now, in terms of the grand jury testimony itself, that's already going to be severely limited, because that only has to do with the testimony that revolves around Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Those are the only people that prosecutors sought convictions on. So already unto itself, like in a vacuum, there's probably not that much third-party information in there, because that information would be found in the full Epstein files, as opposed to the 5%, which is grand jury testimony, which focuses solely on trying to gain convictions for those two individual people.
Absolutely. And another piece of information that came out in the government's memo is that there are essentially two witnesses, right? Which is not unusual in the grand jury. You have someone summarizing what the evidence shows. And then you have public indictments. We have public trials. We know the evidence against Ghislaine Maxwell because there was a long public trial that led to Maxwell's convictions on 5 felony counts, including sex trafficking. We know a lot of the evidence against Jeffrey Epstein because before he died, there were all of these legal proceedings, including his indictment, where this information came to light. So forgetting about the huge hurdles to even getting this information unsealed and what they're going to do to redact that information, if they pass that legal threshold, even if all of that just was thrown out into the ether, it's not the information that the public has been clamoring for.
Right. So they're trying to give us what we weren't asking for, and then within that limited amount of material that they're deigning to allow us to see, which by the way likely won't even be released, because there's again rules that permit the release certain information at the hands of these judges, and they can't do what they can't do. But even within that small amount of limited information, they're still trying to redact information that might accidentally incriminate somebody, like, oh, I don't know, Donald Trump himself.
Right. It is then diminishing returns by definition.
Right.
They're choosing something that is difficult to release, and then if they release it, it'll be full of black lines. That's transparency from Trump's political appointees.
Well, what we are getting some transparency on, however, is the details of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's own sordid past from Trump himself. Famously, yesterday, he came out and said that the reason that he broke it off with Jeffrey Epstein, the reason that their relationship disintegrated, is because not the obvious reason, which would be have something to do with the behavior and actions of a famed pedophile, but rather because Jeffrey Epstein committed the cardinal sin, as far as Trump was concerned, of poaching his employees from Mar-a-Lago. One of those employees was Virginia Giuffre, who, of course, was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, who apparently worked in the spa at Mar-a-Lago when she was a minor and was poached by Jeffrey Epstein, who then abused and trafficked her. You covered this in All Rise News. Can you give an update here in terms of the timeline that doesn't exactly seem to be working out as far as we know?
Right. So the upshot is Trump's story doesn't add up. Even taking his statement that poaching, not predation, was the bridge too far. Let's look at his timeline here. He claims that he was really mad at Jeffrey Epstein for taking Virginia Giuffre from him. we know from her own deposition in the case that she brought against Ghislaine Maxwell that she worked at Mar-a-Lago in 2000. She said she checked against Mar-a-Lago records to confirm that timeline. She worked there for a few months before she testified. She was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell. In now 2 years later, 2 years after that poaching, is when we have the infamous quote of Trump saying that Jeffrey Epstein is a terrific guy, and the full quote. I'm paraphrasing that he likes women, some of them on the younger side. That's
Yeah.
in 2002. In 2004, he has his falling out with Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, and few people have been asking this, if he was so upset about Jeffrey Epstein poaching Virginia Giuffre, why is it that he has shown no resentment, no anger whatsoever that I can see toward Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the one who recruited Virginia Giuffre for Jeffrey Epstein's predation and created all of that? Virginia Giuffre, her bravery in stepping forward in filing the lawsuit is the reason for a lot of a sequence of events here. Without that, we wouldn't have a lot of the paper trail that led to the groundbreaking Miami Herald investigation, the ongoing fight to unseal records. That is one actually to look out for in her. Now, she died earlier this year, and Trump feels free, apparently speaking at press conferences on her about her behalf,
Right,
saying
because there's
things
nobody
that
to push back.
there's no one to push back and saying things that are demonstrably not true.
Yeah.
And what's happening here is we can get more transparency in an ongoing fight to unseal files in that litigation posthumously from Virginia Giuffre than we're getting from Trump's political appointees and their antics in the grand jury unsealing fight here in the Southern District of New York and their failed attempt to do so in the Southern District of Florida.
Well, you'll notice that Trump is quick to talk about Virginia Giuffre without feeling like he needs to adhere to any facts because, again, there's nobody to push back. He feels free to disparage Jeffrey Epstein for poaching his employee, even though it was Ghislaine Maxwell. But tell me if you think I'm off base here, but might it stand to reason that the reason that Trump is only focused on disparaging the dead people and kind of absolving the living people of any and all responsibilities because Ghislaine Maxwell still has information that could hurt Donald Trump, and she's alive to be able to push back. And so he has every incentive in the world to not upset her and not throw her under the bus because he knows that he kind of needs to keep her happy.
I mean, I see why everyone would turn there, because why does he wish her well? Why does he express anger at Jeffrey Epstein for poaching his employee when
Right? He reserves the righteous indignation for the people who are dead and can't push back.
Exactly. There's a pattern at play here, and that it's that the people who can potentially push back get a visit from his former criminal defense attorney, now number two in the Justice Department, and now she's being presented as this real source of information, not the many gigabytes of information that were described in that FBI and DOJ memo. It's really interesting here. There's so much Epstein news and so much of it, it's very hard to break through. But I really recently interviewed Ron Wyden, the top Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee. And he has been pushing an investigation into Epstein's finances. And he recently released information suggesting more than 1.5 billion with a B suspicious transactions from Epstein's account involving thousands of transactions. Now, what is more reliable? The financial data that goes into Epstein's financial empire that has never been fully understood? Or is it this 5-time convicted child predator, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is utterly reliant on Trump's Justice Department and his former criminal defense attorney to say for her to be released from a 20-year sentence? I know my conclusions about what could be more reliable, the financial record, the public record, or is it her word? And by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell also was charged with 2 counts of perjury that did not go to trial only because the prosecutor said they did not want to put the victims through it once again.
Right. Well, look, Adam, you have been doing excellent reporting in this space, and I appreciate your time today. For everybody who's watching right now, to support Adam's work, please make sure to subscribe and sign up for All Rise News. I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. When Adam is going to these courthouses in other states, he's gone and made sure to be on the front lines for the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case or any other cases that are going right now. He's doing it on his own dime. This is independent media at its best. So again, if you want to support his work, please make sure to subscribe. I'll put the link to All Rise News on this screen and in the post description. Adam, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brian, as always.